My name is Detective Pierce. And if there's one thing I've learned in this line of work, it's that words can kill as effectively as bullets. This case didn't start with blood, or screams in the night, or shattered glass. It began with silence. The kind of silence that hangs heavy in an old library when the air itself smells of dust and secrets. I was called in on a Wednesday morning, early enough that the fog hadn't lifted from the river. The voice on the other end of the line belonged to Dr. Eleanor Voss, curator of the Harrington Literary Archive. "There's been a theft," she said. Her tone was clipped, controlled, but under it trembled something raw. "Something irreplaceable has been taken. I've dealt with theft before. Stolen paintings, forged coins, jewelry switched for imitations. But when I asked her what was missing, she hesitated, like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. "A manuscript," she finally said. "An unpublished novel. Written by Samuel Ashcroft." That name hit me harder than any punch. Ashcroft had been one of the brightest lights of American literature, until he disappeared without a trace in 1951. His published works had shaped generations, but rumors had always circulated that he'd left behind an unfinished final book. Scholars whispered about it, collectors dreamed of it, but nobody had ever produced proof it existed. Until now. The Harrington Archive was housed in a Victorian stone building tucked between the river and the University District. Its facade was stern, almost funereal, with iron gates that groaned open under my hand. Inside, it smelled of paper and polish, like every secret had been neatly catalogued and locked away. Dr. Eleanor Voss met me in the main hall. She was in her mid-40s, sharp features softened by exhaustion, her glasses sliding down the bridge of her nose. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash that follows crisis. "Detective Pierce," she said, offering a hand that felt colder than the marble beneath our feet. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Tell me what happened," I said. She led me through echoing corridors to a basement vault lined with reinforced steel. Security cameras blinked overhead, and a pair of guards stood stiffly nearby, their expressions sour. The vault door was ajar. Inside, rows of locked drawers gleamed, each labeled with elegant brass tags. She stopped in front of one drawer and pulled it open with a hiss of metal. "Empty. This is where the Ashcroft manuscript was kept," she whispered. "We discovered it missing this morning." "Who had access?" I asked. "Only myself, my assistant, and the head of security." That was too neat, too limited. Thieves didn't just stroll into high-security archives and pluck history from its hiding place. I knelt, running my fingers over the drawer's interior. No scratches, no force marks. Whoever did this had used a key. "Tell me about the manuscript," I said. She folded her arms as though to protect herself. It was a leather-bound folio. Over 300 pages. Ashcroft's handwriting matched authenticated samples. It was his voice, unmistakable. We had just begun the process of digitizing it. "Any idea who knew it was here?" Her pause told me more than words. "We kept it secret," she said. "But secrecy leaks. Rumors spread. Scholars gossip. Collectors talk. And collectors, I knew the type. The kind who'd pay millions to own something no one else could. The kind who thought of themselves as kings, hoarding treasures in basements where no one would ever see them." I stood, brushing the dust from my coat. "This wasn't just theft," I said. "It was commissioned. Someone wanted that manuscript bad enough to risk everything." Dr. Voss looked at me with eyes sharp as glass. "Then find them. Because if Ashcroft's words vanish into private hands, the world loses them forever." Back in my office that night, I poured a glass of bourbon and opened my notebook. Cases don't start with suspects. They start with threads. Thread 1, Dr. Eleanor Voss. Curator. Intelligent, careful, but visibly shaken. Was she as innocent as she looked? People in charge of treasures sometimes love them too much. Thread 2, the assistant. Name unknown, but assistants always knew more than their bosses thought. They handled the day-to-day. They saw the cracks in the system. Thread 3, head of security. Always the first suspect in an inside job. He had the keys, the codes, the routines. Thread 4, the collectors. Men and women with deep pockets and darker appetites. If Ashcroft's manuscript surfaced in that world, it would fetch enough money to buy silence, loyalty, even murder. I lit a cigarette and watched the smoke curl toward the ceiling. Somewhere in those threads, the truth waited. And I was going to pull until it unraveled. The next morning, I returned to the Harrington archive. The assistant was waiting. Her name was Clara Wynne. Mid-20s, sharp bob haircut, nervous energy bubbling just beneath her polite smile. She led me to her cramped office, stacks of catalog cards and file boxes threatening to topple around us. "You want the truth?" she asked, before I'd even sat down. "That manuscript was cursed from the start." "Cursed?" I raised an eyebrow. "Not in a supernatural sense," she said quickly, "but cursed because of what it stirred up. Dr. Voss didn't want it public yet, but the rumors leaked anyway. I overheard her arguing with a man last week in her office. He was demanding to see it." "Who was he?" She hesitated. "I don't know his name. Wealthy. American accent, but not local. Tall, expensive suit. He said if she didn't cooperate, he'd make an offer she couldn't refuse." "And did she?" Clara shook her head. "She sent him away. But she was shaken. I think she knew he wouldn't stop there." "Interesting. A collector bold enough to confront the curator directly. That meant ego and confidence. Dangerous traits." I leaned closer. "Did you tell anyone else about this?" "No. But I think Dr. Voss might not have told you the whole truth either." Her eyes darted to the hallway. "Because I saw her leave late last night. Hours after the theft was discovered. And just like that, my clean little web of suspects twisted tighter. Was Dr. Voss victim, or architect? And who was the man with the expensive suit and the hunger for forbidden words? The manuscript wasn't just a piece of paper. It was bait. And someone had taken it. The game had begun. Detectives live on contradictions. People lie to your face while insisting they're telling the truth. Innocence hides behind guilt, and guilt hides behind grief. The trick is to listen to the silences more than the words. Clara Wynne's revelation about Dr. Voss leaving the archive after hours was one of those silences. She hadn't accused her boss of theft, not directly, but the implication hung between us like stale smoke. "Tell me more," I said. Clara fidgeted with a paperclip, twisting it into knots. She looked different. Distracted. Like she was carrying something heavy. I didn't see what she had with her, but she left through the side exit, the one staff rarely use. "And you're sure this was after the manuscript went missing?" She nodded quickly. "Yes. The alarm had already been raised. That's why it seemed strange." Strange was an understatement. Either Dr. Eleanor Voss was covering her tracks, or she was caught in a game bigger than she'd admitted. The next step was obvious. Find out about the man in the expensive suit. I had friends in low places. One of them was Simon Drell, a private broker who specialized in rare books and manuscripts. He operated out of a smoke-stained back office above a pawnshop, his walls lined with shelves that groaned under the weight of half-forgotten literature. When I mentioned Samuel Ashcroft's name, Simon's eyes lit up like a man who'd just seen God. "Don't tell me it's surfaced," he said, leaning forward, his nicotine-stained fingers trembling. "Maybe," I said. "What I need is information. Who in the city, or beyond, would kill for an unpublished Ashcroft?" Simon chuckled darkly. "That's a long list. But one name keeps coming up whenever talk of lost manuscripts circles the underground: Gregory Vale." The name was unfamiliar, but the way Simon said it told me everything. Reverence mixed with disgust. "Vale collects what no one else can," Simon continued. "Not art, not jewels. Words. Manuscripts, diaries, letters, the rarer the better. He doesn't display them, doesn't publish them. He hoards them like a dragon. He's got the money, the arrogance, and the reach. If Ashcroft's manuscript is missing, I'd bet my last smoke Vale's behind it. Where do I find him?" Simon smirked. "You don't. He finds you. But I hear he's in town, staying at the Astoria Hotel. Makes sense, doesn't it? Like a vulture circling the bones." The Astoria Hotel was all glass chandeliers and velvet carpets, the kind of place where money wasn't spoken of because it was simply assumed. I found Vale in the lounge, exactly as Clara had described, tall, broad-shouldered, his silver hair combed back like a corporate general, his suit immaculate. He wasn't hiding. Men like Vale never did. Predators don't conceal themselves from prey. I approached his table. He was drinking something amber in a crystal glass, watching the city lights flicker through the tall windows. "Gregory Vale?" I asked. His smile was smooth, practiced. "That depends. Who's asking?" "Detective Pierce. I'm looking into the theft at the Harrington Archive." At the mention of the archive, his eyes glinted like steel. He set his glass down slowly, deliberately. "Ah, the Ashcroft," he said, as if savoring the syllables. "A legend whispered about for decades. And now, gone. Funny coincidence," I said, "you being in town just as it disappears." He chuckled, low and amused. "Coincidence is the currency of detectives, isn't it? Always looking for connections, whether or not they exist." "You visited Dr. Voss," I pressed. "You demanded to see the manuscript." He leaned back, unbothered. "Yes. I made an offer. A very generous one. She refused. Her loss. But theft?" He shook his head, feigning indignation. "I don't stoop to crime when I can simply purchase. Except some things aren't for sale." "Everything is for sale," Vale said softly. "If not with money, then with persuasion. Influence. Fear. Even you, detective, you sell your time, your skills, your loyalty. The world runs on transactions." I studied him, trying to read the flicker in his eyes. Was it arrogance or confession? Men like Vale were masters of blurring that line. "Where were you the night of the theft?" I asked. "In my suite. Surrounded by half a dozen witnesses, if you care to ask. I don't dirty my hands." And there it was, the alibi. Too clean, too rehearsed. But not easily pierced. As I left the hotel, the night air cut sharp against my skin. My instincts told me Vale wasn't lying about not stealing the manuscript himself. He didn't need to. Men like him had people for that. But he wanted me to know he was involved. He wanted me circling him, wasting time. Which meant someone else was moving in the shadows while Vale played the decoy. Back at the archive, I requested access to the security footage. The head of security, a square-jawed man named Harris, was reluctant but complied. We sat in the surveillance room, screens flickering with silent images of empty corridors and locked doors. I fast-forwarded through the night of the theft, my eyes straining against the grain. At 2:17 a.m., movement flickered in the basement hall. A figure in dark clothing, face obscured by a hood. They moved with precision, no hesitation. Straight to the vault. Straight to the drawer. The drawer opened in seconds. No forcing. No fumbling. They had the key. The figure lifted something wrapped in cloth and vanished into the shadows. Harris swore under his breath. That's impossible. Only 3 people have that key. Correction, I said, my voice flat. 4. He frowned. 4? Whoever stole it had an inside copy. The room fell silent. That night, I returned to my office with a nagging thought. Vale might have been bold enough to confront Dr. Voss directly, but the thief? They weren't bold. They were careful. They knew the archive too well. This wasn't a simple outside job. This was rot from within. I poured another drink and wrote down the suspects again. Eleanor Voss, keeper of the secret, with knowledge and access. Possibly hiding more than she revealed. Clara Wynne, the assistant. Too eager to point fingers, too quick with information. Harris, head of security, controlled the keys and codes. Either sloppy or complicit. Gregory Vale, the buyer, the orchestrator. But never the thief himself. Somewhere in that mix lay the truth. And the missing manuscript, the last words of Samuel Ashcroft, was still out there, growing colder by the hour. The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Dr. Voss. She greeted me in her office, the blinds drawn, the desk cluttered with notes. Her eyes were hollow, ringed with fatigue. "Detective," she said wearily. "Any progress?" "That depends," I replied. "Where were you the night of the theft?" She stiffened. "I told you. At home. Your assistant saw you leaving after hours." Her lips tightened. Silence stretched. Finally, she sighed. "Yes. I came back. But not for the reason you think." "Then enlighten me." She opened a drawer and slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photographs of the manuscript itself. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "I was afraid. I wanted to make a backup before anything happened. So I scanned as many pages as I could. But I didn't get far." The photos showed neat handwriting, faded ink, words that seemed to vibrate with life even through the lens. "You kept this from me," I said. "I had to," she whispered. "Because if Vale knew these copies existed, he'd come for me too. He wants exclusivity. Not just the words, the ownership." Her hands trembled as she pushed the folder toward me. "Detective, you don't understand. This isn't just theft. It's war. A war over words. And I don't know how long I can hold out." That was when I knew the case had shifted. It wasn't just about recovering a stolen manuscript anymore. It was about keeping it from vanishing forever into Vale's private vault, or worse. The pages of Samuel Ashcroft's final work had already claimed new victims. And if I wasn't careful, I'd be next. The photographs burned in my hands long after I left Dr. Voss's office. Samuel Ashcroft's words, once thought lost to time, stared up at me from the grainy images. His handwriting slanted with urgency, the ink uneven in places, as if written in dim light or under duress. They weren't full chapters, just fragments Clara had managed to copy before the manuscript vanished. But fragments were enough to stir questions that wouldn't let me sleep. The city breathes in silence, its bones grinding beneath cobblestones. They think the words are mine, but they are borrowed, taken from a place older than memory. A place that listens. Ashcroft had always written in layers, history wrapped in poetry, fact cloaked as myth. But this felt different. Darker. It wasn't just prose. It read like a confession. I set the folder down and poured a stiff drink. Outside my office window, the city hummed, cabs honking, neon flickering, life marching on. Yet I felt watched, as though Ashcroft's long-dead eyes were following me through his scrawled lines. The first threat arrived the next morning. An envelope slid under my office door, heavy with the smell of cigarette smoke. No return address. Inside was a single page ripped from a book, its edges singed. On it, typed in neat courier font, "Stop chasing ghosts. The manuscript is gone. Next time, it won't just be paper that burns." No signature. No clue. Just a warning. I read it twice, then slipped it into a drawer. Threats were as common in this line of work as unpaid bills. But the timing mattered. Someone knew I had seen the copies. Someone wanted me to stop before I started putting the puzzle together. At the archive, Clara greeted me with wide, anxious eyes. "You look pale," she said. "Threats tend to do that," I replied. She gasped. "You've been threatened? By who?" "That's what I intend to find out." Her voice dropped. "You think it's Vale, don't you?" "Vale doesn't waste words," I said. "He buys loyalty, or he destroys it. No, this feels smaller. More desperate. Someone close to the archive. Someone afraid of what I'll find in Ashcroft's pages." I spent the rest of the day poring over the scans Dr. Voss had made. Patterns emerged between the fragments, repeated references to keys, gates, and a hidden city beneath the city. One passage in particular froze me. "And if my words fall into the wrong hands, they will not be read. They will be used. That is the danger and the curse. Knowledge should illuminate, not blind. Yet here I am, writing by the dimmest light, hoping no one finds me before the ink runs dry." It wasn't fiction. Not entirely. It was a warning from Ashcroft himself. But what was so dangerous about his final manuscript? By evening, I returned to Dr. Voss's office. She was waiting, pacing the floor like a caged animal. "Detective, I need to confess something," she said. "That's usually my favorite sentence," I replied. She ignored the sarcasm. "The night of the theft, I wasn't alone. Someone else was in the archive. I didn't tell you because..." She faltered, chewing on her lip. "Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me. Try me." She hesitated, then whispered, "Clara." The name hit the air like a stone through glass. "She came in just after I arrived," Voss continued. "I told her to leave, but she insisted she had forgotten something. I didn't see what she took, if anything. But now I wonder." Now I wonder too. Clara, the earnest assistant, the one who handed me Vale on a silver platter. Too quick to help. Too eager to steer. I found her that night at a cafe near the archive. She looked startled when I slid into the booth across from her. "Detective," she said, voice trembling. "Is something wrong?" "That depends," I replied. "What were you doing in the archive the night the manuscript disappeared?" Her face went pale. "Dr. Voss told you?" "Answer the question." She swallowed hard. I wasn't stealing. I swear. I went back because I wanted to see it. Just once. I knew I'd never get another chance. But it was already gone when I got there." Her eyes filled with tears. "Maybe real. Maybe not." "You expect me to believe that?" I asked. "It's the truth," she whispered. "Detective, you have to believe me. I loved that manuscript. I would never destroy it." I leaned closer. But would you sell it? She flinched like I'd struck her. The conversation ended with more questions than answers. If Clara was lying, she was good at it. If she was telling the truth, then someone else had beaten her to the prize. On my way back to the office, I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Footsteps echoed behind me, too steady, too deliberate. I turned corners, doubled back, but the shadow lingered. Finally, in the alley near my office, a figure stepped into the dim light. A man in a long coat, brim of his hat pulled low. "Detective Pierce," he said, voice low and even. "You're poking your nose where it doesn't belong." "Story of my life," I replied. He stepped closer. In his gloved hand, I caught the glint of metal, not a gun, but a lighter, flicking open and shut. "Walk away," he said, "or the next fire won't be in your office. It'll be in the archive, with people inside." The lighter snapped shut. He melted back into the shadows before I could follow. Back in my office, I sat in the dark, replaying the night. Vale, Voss, Clara, Harris, all of them tangled in this web. And now, faceless men issuing threats in alleys. But the truth was on those missing pages. Ashcroft had written something people were willing to kill for. And until I found out what that was, no one, not Voss, not Clara, not even me, would be safe. The next night, I was pulled from half-sleep by the shrill ring of the telephone. Midnight calls rarely bring good news, and this one was no exception. "Detective Pierce?" a voice gasped. "It's Clara, the archive, it's on fire!" I was on my feet before she finished. Coat, revolver, notebook. Instinct carried me down the stairs and into the street, where the city's late-night air was already tinged with smoke. By the time I reached the archive, fire engines lined the road, their bells clanging, hoses spraying arcs of water against black smoke billowing from shattered windows. Flames licked up the stone facade, red against the night sky. The building looked less like an institution of learning than a sacrificial pyre. Clara stood on the curb, coughing, soot streaking her face. Dr. Voss beside her, pale and trembling, clutching a satchel to her chest as if it contained her very soul. I pushed through the crowd. "What happened?" Clara's voice shook. "I stayed late, to finish cataloging. I smelled smoke, then the fire alarms went off. The manuscript's room, it was targeted. The blaze started there." Targeted. That word cut through the chaos. Dr. Voss raised haunted eyes to me. "Detective, it's gone. Everything Ashcroft left behind. Copies, fragments, even the catalog cards. All gone." I found the fire marshal near the entrance, barking orders. He confirmed my suspicions. "The blaze was no accident," he said grimly. "Accelerants in 3 separate points. Whoever did this wanted one thing, to erase something. Erase, or cover their tracks." As the firefighters battled the inferno, I noticed something odd. The flames had spread fast, too fast. Yet one room, adjacent to the manuscripts, seemed untouched. Its heavy oak door had been wedged shut from the outside, sealing it off from the fire. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, but the shelves remained intact. On the central table, I found a single item, a charred corner of parchment, edges blackened but words still legible. "The city beneath, where time runs backward. Where names are kept, not spoken." Ashcroft's hand? Surviving when everything else had burned. It felt less like chance than design. The next morning, newspapers splashed it across the front page. "Fire destroys archive. Priceless manuscripts lost." Vale would be smiling behind his tailored curtains, sipping coffee, knowing his competition was ashes. But the fire wasn't his style. Vale bought. He corrupted. He didn't torch entire archives and risk headlines. No, this was someone else's game. Back in my office, I laid the surviving scrap on my desk and pored over it. Words half erased by fire carried more weight than full sentences. Time runs backward. Names are kept, not spoken. The manuscript wasn't literature. It was a riddle. Or worse, a set of instructions. By midday, Clara appeared, her eyes swollen from smoke and tears. "I can't take it anymore," she said. "Detective, someone's watching me. Last night, before the fire, when I left, the same man you described, with the lighter. He was outside. Just standing, waiting. And I think he followed me home." Her voice cracked. "What if it's me they're after? What if it's because I helped you?" I handed her a glass of water. "They're not after you, Clara. They're after Ashcroft's words. You just happened to be close." But even as I said it, I wondered. Was she telling me everything? Or playing frightened to cover her part? Later, I received a call from Vale himself. His tone was smooth, deliberate. "Detective Pierce. Such a tragedy, the fire. To think, decades of history, gone in a single night. If only the city took better care of its treasures. You sound almost disappointed you didn't get to buy it first," I said. He chuckled. "On the contrary. Some things are worth more when destroyed. When knowledge becomes scarce, its value rises. Remember that." There was a pause, then his voice dropped. "You should stop digging. The ashes don't concern you. Unless you'd like to join them." The line went dead. That night, I couldn't shake the smell of smoke from my coat. I sat in the half-light of my office, staring at Ashcroft's surviving scrap, when a knock came at the door. A boy stood there, maybe 12, hat pulled low. He didn't speak, just handed me a folded note, then ran off into the night. I opened it. "Meet me at Pier 9. Midnight. Bring the scrap. Come alone." No signature. No explanation. Just another move in a game whose board I hadn't yet seen. Pier 9 reeked of salt and rust. Midnight brought fog thick enough to swallow shapes whole. The pier stretched into black water, lanterns dim in the mist. A figure waited at the far end, tall, lean, face hidden beneath a hood. "You have something that belongs to us," the voice said, low and rough. "The scrap?" I asked. "The key," the figure corrected. "Ashcroft's words were never meant for daylight. Hand it over, and you might live to forget them." The pier groaned beneath us as the fog swirled. I slipped my hand into my coat, brushing the revolver. If this was the burning trail Ashcroft had left behind, I had no choice but to follow it, even if it consumed me next. The hooded figure on Pier 9 stood motionless as the fog thickened around us, swallowing sound and sight until it felt like we were the only two souls left in the world. "You don't know what you're holding," the figure said, voice low, almost reverent. "Ashcroft's words are poison. A city could fall for less." I tightened my grip on the folded scrap in my coat pocket. "Then why steal it? Why burn the rest?" "To keep it from hands like Vale's." The name struck sharp in the mist. "So you did torch the archive?" I said. The figure shifted but didn't answer. Instead, they reached into their cloak and produced something I didn't expect, another piece of parchment, edges singed but intact. "You see? Not everything burned." The words danced like shadows across the page, Ashcroft's script flowing with symbols that seemed to curl into themselves. When the figure held it up, I recognized a phrase identical to the scrap I carried. "Two halves of the same key. You want to hand me one piece while you keep the other?" I asked. "That's not how trust works. You wouldn't understand," the figure said sharply. This isn't about trust. It's about survival. Ashcroft wasn't a dreamer or a scholar. He was a mapmaker, but not of places you can walk. He charted minds, memories, secrets. The fog shifted. Behind us, faint footsteps echoed on the wooden boards. Vale emerged from the haze like a vulture stepping out of smoke, flanked by two heavy-set men in dark suits. His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I wondered who'd come crawling out of the ashes," Vale said. "Now I see. The rat and the detective, both gnawing on scraps." The hooded figure froze. I felt their hand twitch toward a hidden weapon, but Vale's men were already pulling revolvers. "Easy," I muttered. "No one needs another fire tonight." Vale ignored me, eyes locked on the parchment. "Ashcroft hid something beneath this city, detective. Something only his words can reveal. That manuscript was never about history, it was a set of coordinates. Whoever holds the complete text holds the vault." The hooded figure hissed through their teeth. "You think it's treasure? Gold? Jewels? You fool. What's buried beneath isn't wealth. It's the reason he destroyed half his own work. No one should open it." Vale spread his arms. "Then I will. Men kill for gold. They build empires for secrets. Either way, I win." The pier crackled with tension. Guns, fog, and the black water beneath us. I had two options: hand over the scrap to Vale and by Clara's safety, or side with the hooded figure and plunge deeper into a secret that already left fire and death in its wake. But then I noticed something. Vale's men, steady hands, trained eyes, weren't watching the figure. They were watching me. My pocket. Vale already knew. I drew the scrap and held it up. "Funny thing about maps," I said. "Sometimes the legend matters more than the land. Without this, all you've got is fog." Vale's smile faltered. "Just slightly. But enough." The hooded figure seized the moment, hurling their own parchment into the air. It caught the wind, fluttering toward the water. Vale's men spun to grab it. Shots cracked, wood splintered, lanterns swung wildly. I ducked low, pulling my revolver, firing once, twice. Chaos on the pier erupted, shouts, smoke, gunfire. By the time the noise settled, Vale was gone, retreating into the fog with one of his men bleeding and the other dragging him away. The hooded figure was gone too. And the parchments? Both lost to the black water below. Morning found me at my desk again, smoke-stained coat hanging on the rack, a bitter cup of coffee in hand. Clara slipped in quietly. "It's over?" she asked. I shook my head. "Nothing's over. Vale's still out there. Ashcroft's vault, if it even exists, is still buried. And the only map to it is gone." Her eyes flicked to my desk, to the folded scrap I hadn't shown either Vale or the hooded figure. The one I'd slipped into my sleeve before Pier 9. "Detective," she began. I cut her off. "Sometimes history's safer in ashes. And sometimes it's worth keeping one match unlit." That night, alone in my office, I unfolded the surviving scrap one last time. The words burned into me. The city beneath, where time runs backward. Where names are kept, not spoken. Outside, the rain swept the streets clean. But deep below the city, in chambers Ashcroft had marked, the secrets still waited. And I knew, one day, someone would go looking again.